and thank you for joining us this evening. I have sat in with me my partner in crime, Andy.
Good evening, Steve.
Hello, Andy.
Pleased to meet you.
Now, Steve, when we spoke earlier, you were a little bit weary. You've had an awfully busy year, haven't you? I mean, not just busy, but busy. In fact, almost too busy.
Yeah, it does take it out of you, always activism. I mean, it's been since 2010, really, when it sort of started, almost by accident, and a campaign against the Birmingham spy cameras, and then ended up was successful there. They were all removed, and I was invited by the Home Office to give evidence to Parliament and on the so-called Protection of Freedoms Bill and the CCTV elements of that.
Mm-hmm.
And lots and lots of interviews, mainstream media and or alternative media, a bit of writing, and generally following what's going on and the direction it's all heading in.
Well, I must admit, I haven't been following your progress too greatly, because without wishing to be negative here, there are lots and lots of people trying to do something to stop this onslaught, this invasion of privacy, this stealing of our freedoms. And it is my pleasure to actually, I heard you on another show a little while ago, and the one thing I'm not going to ask you to do this evening is perhaps not talk to us too much about what we can already find online, because obviously I'm going to post a lot of your information in the future about what you're up to. So rather than repeat what you're up to, are we able to chat about, I mean, we still think that we can actually pick up a camera and photograph anything. Could you perhaps help us with a little bit of the rules and regulations about, what we can actually do with a camera nowadays?
Well, individuals are perfectly entitled to film what they like in a public place. There's no restrictions on that. So if you're out in public and you've got a camera or a camera phone, if you want to film, either take photographs or some video footage of anything really, including police officers on duty, anything at all, it's perfectly lawful. There aren't any restrictions on that. But they're trying to bring in more and more restrictions under the guise of terrorism and also an element of harassment we've all seen the videos on YouTube where the cop doesn't want to be filmed.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this country, you're perfectly entitled to film in a public place. Obviously, it would be a different matter if you went into somebody's private house or somebody's business premises or something. You'd need their permission. But in a public place, you can film whatever you like. And but getting that message across to the police is they've obviously got different ideas. I mean, this happened to me this year actually. I was just walking from my flat to the pub, and I have to walk past the police station, and I just happened to see a big CCTV van parked in front of the police station with serving the community, so looking out for you, CCTV, written all over the sign.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, yep, that's a nice picture, just that parked up in front of the police station. So I just stopped, took one picture, and carried on my way, and was immediately stopped by the police, who wanted to question me about my suspicious behaviour, and wanted me to explain and justify what I was doing and why I was doing it. I calmly explained that I didn't really need to do that, since it was perfectly lawful activity. I don't need anyone's permission, nor do I really need to justify or explain. But they don't like that, because there's a great element of the obedience training about it. The social compliance that comes into play when faced with a uniformed police officer. Most people, just because they want to get away, will just do whatever's asked of them. But no, I made a point of saying that it's perfectly lawful activity and therefore not suspicious, and I don't need a reason. I ended up saying that I've got an interest in surveillance and the Big Brother police state.
And that's absolutely right, but they wanted to hear that. I mean, I have had very, very little dealings with the police, and the police that I do deal with are local. They're on a very local level, and because I've lived here for a long time, I actually know them to say hello to a point. The younger ones are a little bit more difficult to approach, but the older ones are still fine. I mean, is that being repeated all over the country? Is it the younger ones that are perhaps getting a slightly different training regime, that we're to be seen as the enemy, possibly? We're to be suspected of being a criminal. It's almost guilty unless you can prove yourself innocent. Is that the approach that they're being taught, do you think, nowadays?
I think that is increasingly the approach, or the way that the police as an institution views the public, almost as the enemy. Everyone's a potential criminal, potential bad guy. Everyone is potentially doing something wrong or going to do something wrong, or if you know, gone is the element that there's a few bad guys. Now it's just assumed that everyone is a bad guy, or potentially.
But this level of paranoia is always held by those up to no good, though, isn't it? The people who are up to no good always they throw their fears onto other people. In other words, when they're doing no good, they assume everybody else is up to no good. Because they have, we think you've done something wrong, so prove you don't. You know, empty your pockets. Where you're going? Why won't you tell me if you've nothing to hide? What you're worried of? And yet you try filming them and say using it back against them. And now somehow you're acting suspicious, and we must be taken in for further questioning.
Well, this is the problem of things escalating from nothing into something simply by virtue of you come into contact with a policeman. Happened to a friend of mine the other day, and was walking along the street, just come from visiting his mother. Was on his way home, and he's not got a lot of hair, so he's got a bit of a shaved head, and it was a cold December morning. He's walking along with a hood on his coat up, and a police van, and just happened to be a CCTV van, probably the same one that I took a picture of, went past, and then a couple of minutes later came back again and pulled up and sort of pulled him over, just stopped and got out and said, you know, where you going, what you up to, all this sort of questioning. Basically, they said they pulled him over because he was wearing a hood, and they said we couldn't see your face. The police don't have a right to inspect your face. You're free to go about, you know, showing your face or not showing your face. But it's the nature of the institution of the police that they thought that was suspicious, therefore he might be, I don't know, a drug dealer, a burglar, whatever. But without reasonable grounds for suspicion, i.e. to stop and search somebody, you've got to have reasonable grounds that they're either in possession of stolen goods, drugs, or a weapon like a knife or something. You can't just say he looks dodgy, let's pull him over.
But they're now doing that.
Well, yeah, I mean, my friend was basically quizzed for simply walking down the street with his hood up.
Now we've launched.
That itself is suspicious.
Yeah, we've launched into this conversation because I always ask the questions that I want to ask, really, without thoroughly actually introducing you properly. Now, you've been involved with CCTVs. You said 2010, so this will be the third full year. Would that be correct, that you've been actually researching and sharing your research and findings all over the internet via interviews and your Facebook pages and your website, of course, which is nocctv.net, is it?
.org,
sorry, yeah. And you know, that website is actually packed full of information about what they're up to. So it is the starting interview question. What got you started? Why CCTV?
Well, like I said, almost by accident. I didn't know a great deal about the subject, and I just remember being vaguely annoyed by it. The fact that
I thought it might be some science or some project or some other angle. Really, I thought there might be something. But we're all interested in a certain thing, you know, certain part of this conspiracy, and by God, it is now an open conspiracy, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, getting back to the event that kind of sparked my interest was that, just other than just a vague annoyance at it being intrusive, you go for a meal in a restaurant, there's a camera pointed in your face. I hadn't really given it that much thought until something happened on my doorstep almost, and that was this undercover surveillance operation mounted in Birmingham, or that the police and the counter-terrorism unit attempted to install in Birmingham. They didn't finish installing it, but basically hundreds of cameras just sprung up, literally overnight. And local residents were quite surprised and didn't know anything about it. And a few of them were in the area near me, and I thought, well, what's going on here is a bit odd. One of the first things that came to light was that nobody seemed to know anything about it. You know, the local councillor didn't know who was behind it. The local police station said it's nothing to do with us. So that was a bit odd. And then we discovered this shadowy quango called the Safer Birmingham Partnership that said, we put it up, we got some money from the Home Office. So I thought, well, why is central government installing cameras in residential neighbourhoods in such massive numbers? There's something not right about this. And there wasn't. It was, the whole scheme was called Project Champion, and it consisted of mainly automatic number plate recognition cameras that scan your number plate, run you through several databases and track your whereabouts, all your movements and your journey detail. Those have been placed in a ring around the two main Muslim areas in Birmingham with the highest Muslim population, which is data they probably got from the census. So there was like a digital moat. You couldn't get in or out without being tracked and recorded. And inside those areas, there were 72 hidden covert spy cameras, which was clearly made it something other than just local community safety and crime fighting. It was nothing of the sort. So there was this huge sort of this undercover operation, and then basically I blew the whistle on it. I went to The Guardian and other newspapers and did loads of media interviews, TV, radio, all over the world the story went, and I just kept hammering them in the media because they'd lied and said, oh, these cameras, they're just for community safety, we're going to catch burglars and drug dealers, that sort of thing. But nobody was buying it because it was extremely targeted, and the covert nature of a lot of it was, nothing like this had ever been done in this country before. It was a massive, huge leap forward in the police state.
And was the fact that you discovered it being covertly done, was that the red face, was that the embarrassment that really caught them short, as it were? They hadn't thought it through. They thought, oh yeah, we'll just install these hundreds of cameras. Yep. If anyone asks, just tell them it's for community safety. And they thought that would be enough. That would be enough for people not to get wind of what was really going on. But I got hold of a document from the West Midlands Police Authority that showed that the money had come from the Association of Chief Police Officers Terrorism Fund and a counter-terrorism fund. So clearly that was where it originated. So that came out immediately, and then the police sort of said, oh well, yes, of course it would include all sorts of crime, even terrorism. Yes, it would. These wonderful cameras will help with any kind of crime. But the whole thing was obviously designed to spy on Muslims, but they were told it was to stop burglars breaking into your homes and drug dealers selling heroin to your kids and your shops from being broken into, when there was no such thing. It was a blatant lie, and the police actually conspired to spin that lie, to lie to our councillors and to lie to the public, and they got caught doing that. They got caught out. They got caught lying and spying, and I think the humiliation of the barrage of negative publicity that went on for 8 months really forced them to do a U-turn, and they just wanted to draw a line under it, and they wanted everyone to forget, because it wasn't a story that was a here today, gone tomorrow, and then forgotten kind of story. It went on for so long that the police just ended up, the only way to kill the story was to kill the scheme, which was an amazing victory, and I don't think anything like that's been achieved before. You hear about cameras going up, but you never hear about them being taken down. No, you don't. No, absolutely. I mean, I'm smiling away to myself, and I'm going to ask you that when you approached the press, especially when you said you went to The Guardian, I mean, were they happy to carry it, or was there some sort of but we'll have to check first? I mean, what did you experience there?
Well, I had one of the top award-winning investigative journalists who's quite used to exposing sort of police brutality and things like that. He was involved in the Ian Tomlinson reporting, so that was his kind of bag, really. So he was very interested in that sort of statism, overstepping the mark of the police state. Was quite in tune with what he wrote about. But a lot of people, it was too hot for them to handle. Initially, a lot of people just didn't want to talk about it. My MP didn't really want to hear about it. Initially, he didn't reply to my emails, and then only when Sky News went to see him and stuck a microphone in his face and said, "What do you think about this spy camera scheme in your constituency?" And then he had to start commenting, and he said, "Oh well, it was nothing to do with me. I wasn't asked. I think it was terrible that people weren't consulted." That was the initial thing, but the consensus of what's wrong with that? It's for national security. Of course, that's a good thing. And then me saying, no, this is a massive infringement of civil liberties, and if this is allowed to go ahead here, it'll happen everywhere, and it's unlawful and unjust. I was the odd one out initially, and then over the course of about 6 months, the thing seemed to shift more and more and more until eventually everyone came around to my idea of thinking. And I was kind of proved right, which was quite gratifying. Really,
you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, you're
I held up the parapet, and it was. I constantly had to justify. I mean, I went on BBC and all the mainstream media, and I had to justify why I didn't think this spy camera operation was a good thing, because everyone just assumes that more power for law and authority. More cameras to fight crime, it's always a good thing. There isn't a downside. How could there possibly be, unless you're a terrorist or a criminal? So that's the kind of mindset that you're pushing against. It's really the task is really to try and get people to step back a little bit, and look with a broader perspective and look at it slightly differently.
I'm going to probe a little further, and how did you achieve that? Because if we can all get people to step back and look at the bigger picture, we've made a start. Because I don't know how many years you've sort of been investigating the conspiracy that is now all for us all to see, but getting people to actually listen to what it is that we have to share with people is still. It's still the $64,000 question. It's still, how do you do it? What's the answer? And for someone who's achieved it, where did your support come from? Because obviously the residents were primarily Muslims, you said.
Most of the people affected directly by it would have been Muslims, and that was why the targeting was done that way.
Yes, that was my question. Yeah, I was going to ask, did they see it differently to perhaps what would be a domesticated Westerner?
Some did from the start. They realised that this was a sort of MI5, surveillance operation. But a lot of the the local shopkeepers and the local community were of the mind that any cameras for any purpose will be good, because they might catch the odd criminal, and because I'm not a criminal, then therefore it's a good thing. Even if you tell them this is being done to spy on Muslims and record where you go and who you meet, a lot of them still thought, well, I've got a clean conscience, I've nothing to worry about. And that's the problem. A lot of people can't see the danger. They can't see that any potential threat might apply to them. But it's always, it's for other people perhaps to worry about.
Yeah, I was just curious how you actually got them to back you in the end. It was, it's a skill that I don't think I yet have, but I would love to learn it from those that have already achieved it. How do you get people to see that we were okay before these cameras arrived, so why do we need them now? Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, there was a bit of research done and a report to the police authority about a year after the cameras were removed that said that crime had actually fallen after the cameras that were never installed were taken away and scrapped, and that crime reporting was up. So all this nonsense about how will we fight crime without these cameras if they get taken away was nonsense. It was proved to be wrong, because crime went down naturally anyway without the help of any cameras. And crime reporting went up, so the detection rates were better. But there was no local facility for the local police to look at any of the data. It was exclusively and solely for the counter-terrorism unit and MI5 to scrutinise and to draw inferences and conclusions from people's movements and connections.
So it was just an experiment, really?
Well, it's been done in Northern Ireland. Yeah. That was really where ANPR cameras were first developed and tested in the field. And that was sort of dealing with the IRA and other political enemies, and they basically just imported it and said, well, let's try it in Birmingham, let's use it to spy on the Muslims, and let's pretend this is normal, and hopefully nobody will notice.
Okay, now the strapline for our show really is that if we don't learn how much trouble we're in and admit that it exists, we're never actually going to manage to turn it around till we get to the front of the troubles, as it were. And I wonder if I could ask you to. CCTV is something that, yes, most people are comfortable with, and they all look the same, and they're in city centres, and we don't really spot them anywhere else. But I wonder if you could perhaps help identifying the CCTV cameras have become more sophisticated, and where else can we find them that perhaps we don't see them so easily?
Well, you won't see them quite so easily these days, because all the new ones that are going in are 360 dome cameras. They're the little mini domes that have got a sort of a half a sphere of sort of black-looking perspex, a little dome. That's the camera's in there, but you can't see where it's pointing. And this is another kind of advancement where the camera itself isn't really pointed out, it's not really obvious, and you don't know where it's pointing. So it's becoming almost covert surveillance. The smallest ones I've seen in public use are on double-decker buses in Birmingham. There's 6 on each bus. That's not counting the ones that sometimes have outside the bus. And they're very small. You know, they're just sort of like a little ping-pong ball size, less than that even. So that's what we're looking out for, little dark domes. They don't even look like cameras anymore, but they are on buses, trains, taxis as well.
Yeah.
Council's trying to implement mandatory surveillance cameras in taxis, but also record sound. So they're going to be recording everything you say. And this is, you can't deny that you're the subject of the surveillance. With a street camera, you can say, well, they're looking out for muggers, they're looking out for, antisocial behaviour or people doing bad things. In a taxi, you're the only person in there. Who are they filming? Who's under surveillance? It's you, isn't it? You can't deny it any longer. And what's really happening is now that the first stage of the infrastructure is being upgraded and all the gaps are being filled in. So we're going to high definition cameras, which are, gone are the days, or soon will be the days of the sorts of CCTV footage we see printed in newspapers. They're so blurry and grainy that you think, well, is that even a human form? Never mind, can you tell us who it is? It doesn't even look like a person, it's a blob. The new surveillance camera commissioner that the government's appointed to administer this code of practice, a guy called Andrew Renison, not long ago he warned in the media, he came out and said that high-definition cameras and facial recognition cameras will breach the Human Rights Act, Article 8 of the Human Rights Act, which is the right to a private life. He says that these cameras are so good these days, they can literally spot you from half a mile away and pick out your face. That's a big leap from the early days where, there was perhaps a camera pointing at the door of a bank.
Yeah.
And nobody really had a problem with that. Now we're looking at sort of grabbing your facial identity from a long way away without your knowledge or consent, really. And that is, facial recognition is in development and it's the holy grail. It's not really being used yet, although the powers that be would like us to think that it is. But that's really what they'd like to be able to achieve, to simply scan a street scene and identify everyone that the camera can see, and link that to information about those people. And that's an obsession with surveillance and monitoring and identity that really runs throughout the whole formation of this global panopticon that's taking shape.
And we've seen them in Wetherspoons as well, the cameras. I mean, it is the pub of the future, isn't it, the Wetherspoons? All the kids go together, they've got the cheaper beer. So they've got everybody on surveillance in the pub, going out of the pub down the street, as you say, going home in a taxi. There isn't a place you can't go now where you can't be seen. And I do understand, I don't know what your perspective of it is, but they've even got something in the street lights that they can actually listen to voices. Have you heard about that one? It was a Dutch company that came up with those.
That's being implemented in Detroit, Chicago, and I can't remember the other city, but they're starting to install that across America.
Now, I'm not convinced they're not in this country, because 2-3 years ago, right in the city that I live, which is Ripon, in North Yorkshire, they actually just changed all our streetlights. They just came along, took down the old ones, and put up some new ones. And the guys who were busy doing it, they came in my shop. Actually, I've got a fish and chip shop, and they came in for lunch. And I thought, I've got to ask him. So I said, guys, what are you changing them for? And they said, apparently the concrete structure is crumbling in some circumstances, so we've been told to change them all. And I said, okay. I said, but it looks like you're putting some new wiring in. He said, yeah, we are. I said, what are you putting new wiring in for? He said, we don't know. And that was it. So we actually researched those streetlights, didn't we? And we went on and we found something in the Daily Mirror, didn't we?
Yep.
From 2010. And it said, is your streetlight watching you? And the picture in the Daily Mirror was exactly like the streetlight that is outside my shop right now.
Yeah.
And that's what. And we asked our local councillors, and they laughed at us, didn't they? I'm going back to try again.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right, Paul. You are right, because what's happening all across the UK is the local authorities are installing what they're sort of selling and pitching as low energy, eco-friendly, energy-saving lights, LEDs. Or that they use a fraction of the energy, we can save money, and they're essentially controllable from a central control room, so we can dim them a bit, or we can set the timings on or off. We can save money by intelligently controlling these lights.
Yeah, I've seen the IntelliStreets ad, and when you use the word dim, I always think that the dim in the damn skies, the dim in the damn light bulbs in my house, the dim in the bloody street lights, the dim in the kids. You think, this is a dark bloody future they've got designed for us.
Yeah, well, darkness is ironically, one of the features that comes with these new smart street lights. And lots of councils are actually turning them off between 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, because they say, well, most people aren't out in those hours, so we'll turn them off, save energy. But of course, you're creating darkness. One of the main crime reduction tools that you can use is really good street lighting. So if you turn the street lights off, you're almost inviting crime. And so they're going to save money by turning the lights off. And then, of course, what have you got? You've got a de facto curfew.
Yeah, because it's bloody scary. They'll snatch you out of your bloody house and nobody will see you.
Well, you're more likely to be stopped by the police. They'll say, well, what are you doing out after lights out?
Yes, that's the way I was going. I'm saying that this doesn't feel like a wartime curfew, but it does.
Yeah.
Because when we do our shows, I actually describe the life we live. It's war and peace. The way we speak is war and peace. And the government, historically, has always been at war with its people. And we've always had to push them back and remind them who pays the wages. This time, they call it the final revolution. This is where they feel that this time they can take control, and we're never going to wrestle it back off them. And I'm a little concerned, because the European Union have awarded themselves the Peace Prize today, and you think to yourself, they're congratulating themselves on how far they've got so far. And it's becoming a bit unnerving, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I hear Hillary Clinton got a Peace Prize as well, didn't she?
Oh, the Wicked Witch of the bloody West. I mean, the next president, she's going to be the next president of America, because she's openly said she's going to run for it. I mean, how many Clinton administrations are we going to have? But we're getting off topic here, because where else can we find CCTV cameras? Because I'm led to believe that, I don't know if we've got a camera in our cars, but we do have an onboard monitoring system.
Well, that's the problem. The monitoring, the potential for monitoring with new technology is almost limitless, and it's become a sort of orgy of surveillance. It's a multi-billion-pound industry, and it's becoming all-pervasive. I mean, the street lighting thing is heading towards the smart city with a smart grid.
Yep, see that. Yep.
It becomes like an operating system for the city. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing traffic lights controlled not by, I don't know, some sort of device in the post. They're controlled by Wi-Fi from another location. The same thing is happening with CCTV. It's going wireless. All the new streetlights that you mentioned have all got a Wi-Fi transmitter on the top, and every single one has the potential to have a camera just plug and play. It's Wi-Fi, and they've got a Wi-Fi receiver on the top. You can just literally, bolt one on. And the construction company, Amy Construction, that's got the contract to replace Birmingham streetlights, have already admitted, they said, oh yes, they've all got the capability. If the camera were requested, we could just put one up. So every single lamppost is potentially the site of a new surveillance camera, and it's all Wi-Fi. So everything is now talking to everything else. Now that all the information is being digitised, and there are plans for cities to become, super smart cities. All this information will interact with other things. Your mobile phone might interact with the Wi-Fi on the lamppost. There's this sort of convergence of data in this sort of surveillance cloud.
You're using the terminology that makes perfect sense to me, because they're building a virtual land, aren't they? And they're making our bowls that we live in much smaller. Slowly but surely, when you look at the agenda and how it's working, is that they don't really want us to travel as far as we used to. They'd rather we didn't bother with cars at all. And if we do bother with cars, that the CEO of Ford has openly said, this is Ford Motor Company, has openly said by about 2025 he expects that we will have lost the ability to drive cars, or the desire to feel that we want to drive cars. I'm not sure that's true for me, but it may be true for the youngsters behind me, because I do see in the younger generation, firstly, they can't afford to drive cars, or at least if they can afford to buy a car, they can't afford to insure it. And this month, the girls' insurances have been married to the boys' insurance costs as well. And the girls are meant to go up to sort of 12 to 20%, and the boys are meant to be coming down sort of 5 to 10%. So there's a profit in there for the insurance companies. But what I'm getting to saying, they really want us to stay within the boundaries that they set for us. And then pretty much as we walk past every monitoring station, just like a Facebook picture, as we walk past, the name gets put above our head, and they'll know who it is with the biometric scans, the face scans, and the GPS system that is your mobile phone at the moment. But we say, if you've got your head in your phone, it's possible in the future you could have your phone in your head.
Yeah, well, that's even before our RFID chips, which are being used in credit cards for contactless technology.
Yeah.
They're in products, those RFID tags that you get on supermarket products.
Mm-hmm.
And while we implant them into cats and dogs so that we can track their whereabouts, that's the sort of direction it's heading in. At the moment, we might carry them in the form of a credit card or perhaps in your mobile phone, but it's the obsession with tracking, identifying and tracking everything that moves, so vehicles and people, and it really is a sort of pathological obsession.
I call it paranoia. It's if you're up to no good, you've got to make sure that you find out who knows you're up to no good and stop them telling everybody else.
I mean, all the stuff we're discussing, it's people really ought to begin to realise that this is not science fiction. This is not a Hollywood movie or a dystopian novel. It's actually happening, and yet I don't know what it is that makes people seem unconcerned by it. Perhaps they think it's not a threat to them directly, or they can't see how it might be.
Well, I was just going to say that they can make the threat, can't they? If this technology is Wi-Fi, which we pretty much know that it is, then the technology is not only transmitting to your mobile phone, but and mobile phone outwards, but could they not even make the information up? We know they've got CGI. They know that everybody's picture's on Facebook. Could they not make something up and put you in a situation where you've never been, you've never done that, you've never had that information, and suddenly it appears everywhere in your cloud? Well, we know they're going to the iCloud, so it could be in your cloud, and they can put you in a situation where you've never been done and made it all up, and nobody'll believe you, as we've seen with what's gone on with the Jimmy Savile thing and all this kind of thing.
Yeah, they just think it's Jimmy Savile, Gary Glitter and Freddie Starr, don't they?
Exactly.
And that's
all you need for that to be implicated falsely is to appear on the UK Police's smartphone app called FaceWatch, where they issue wanted posters to people's mobile phones, basically saying, if you see this person, they're wanted, tell us who they are or where you saw them, dob them in. So you just need to be accused. If you look like somebody on one of these wanted posters, then you better watch out.
Just head towards. It's worse than Orwell ever pictured, isn't it?
It is. It's beyond his wildest dream, because he didn't envisage the internet and the amazing opportunities for total spying that provides. I mean, Julian Assange has been talking and writing about that lately, and the government's now wanting to introduce total surveillance of all your online activities, your mobile phone, your landline.
Well, they're just telling us they've been doing it, basically. I mean, I was aware of that, and it is.
But they're actually saying, okay, we may have been doing this for quite some time without telling you, but now we want to make it all. We want to actually tell you, there's a phrase, isn't there? Anything you say can and will be taken down and used.
And that's in there. That's in there, isn't it?
And we used to say that to people who'd been arrested for on suspicion of committing a crime. Mm-hmm. Now the government is saying that to every citizen in the land. You are a suspect. And
there is a threat that they'll use it retrospectively, don't they? There is
something you wrote on Facebook in 1992.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. oh, you might be in trouble for that retrospectively. You know, who knows? Because people are increasingly getting at the knock of the door, the arrest for some sort of speech crime, thought crime, or hate crime. If somebody's offended by something, and there was the case of the young lad who burnt a poppy and took the photo.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
He was arrested. You know, that was. You know, you've got the thought police monitoring your social networks.
So let's just go through them, because in a normal house, then, in a regular house that has everything, you know, what the average household would have, let's start with every device that has the capability to monitor you. We won't say that they're doing it, but we'll say that we're aware that the capability exists and they admit that it is so. So if we start with the oldest device, I think, which would be our regular telephone. And we know from the Second World War, now the files are out, that the telephone system was monitored even in the Second World War. All the spies were rounded up over time, and they always thought, how did they work out who the spies were? Well, they would just listen to the telephone calls. It was all keyword operator keywords. And nobody realised that in the Second World War at all, until they got caught, of course. So we know our house telephone is recording everything we do. But what else are we going to find in our house? What else would you go with next, Steve?
Well, the mobile phone and the computer.
Mm-hmm. I can back up the computer straight away. I mean, I can go back to last summer. Upstairs in my house, I have a fire alarm, you know, and the battery was beeping, as they do. And I was online, the battery was beeping, and everything else was quiet around me. And I laughed my head off. I was on YouTube at the time, and as I was scanning through YouTube, the actual YouTube videos on the right-hand side of what you could watch next turned to fire alarms and batteries and installing batteries in fire alarms. I kid you not. I laughed and laughed and laughed my head off.
Spooky.
Yeah, my fire alarm was beeping off, and within the second, third beep or whatever it was, down the YouTube sidebar was fitting a new battery to a smoke alarm. How to test your smoke alarm? I promise you.
You see, that principle is being designed into new television sets now. Television sets that actually watch you and what's happening in the room.
Well, do you think that the digital changeover would be the point at which the TV was watching you watching it?
I think at the moment you would have to go out and buy a new TV, because there are TVs at Samsung, I think, that, you know, say, oh, we've got facial recognition on here. It can tell mum from dad, and it will say, oh, we know you like Doctor Who, and it will suggest programs and stuff. And they make it sound as if it will really enhance the user experience and make the customers really pleased with the new modern nature of the product. But really, it's a camera that's watching you, filming you, recognizing who it is that's in the room. You know, that is basically linked digitally to the outside world. So you've got a camera in your home that's linked to the outside world. You know, if people don't get spooked by that, then I don't know what will.
Well, we also know that the satellite boxes are rumoured to have, and you can find evidence online that the satellite boxes have at least a microphone in them. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I can find evidence of people online who say it's true, but I can't back that up. But I've
heard that, and I've seen videos. But again, I don't know.
I don't know. No, I don't know. But how about the game stations that the kids are playing? Now, are they not the most advanced thing that you might have in your house? Because they do have facial recognition, and they do watch your body, such as the Nintendo Wii. I think lots of them can do it, but I don't know, exactly. And that is, it watches your body movements and can mimic them real time.
Yeah, the latest in the smart TVs is not just recognising faces, but recognising it's sort of behavioural recognition software. The idea is that it can recognise whether a couple is cuddling or
yes,
I don't know, and it's going to somehow market things at you depending on what you're doing. I mean, it even sounds ridiculous to me, but they are working on this stuff.
Well, Google openly are saying that, aren't they? I mean, this has been found by sources that I trust, and it says that Google does have the ability to watch a couple on the sofa and market you condoms and weekends away and hotel breaks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but there are little ways that we can fight back. I mean, we don't have to participate in all of these systems. We don't have to use Google. Instead of saying Google it, web search it. Use something like Start Page. Yeah, doesn't record your IP address. It doesn't record what pages you visit. There are email programs like Hushmail that uses encryption. We can look into something like the Tor browser, which will access the deep net or the dark net. We've really got to get more savvy. And
use the Linux operating system and stuff like that, yeah.
Obviously, I'm equally guilty as many of us are of using these surveillance systems to try and disseminate information and to kind of educate people and wake them up about what's going on. But of course, we're sort of participating in it. We're using the big internet companies. Using, say, Google, YouTube, Blogger.
Yeah. I know we're all guilty, but they've built a system that we have no opportunities to do anything other than this, and they're allowing us to at least broadcast the dangers to those that want to hear it. So I guess all we can do is broadcast the dangers to those that want to hear it, really.
Yeah.
And we know what we should do to avoid further invasions of privacy. And if we don't do it, then we should shut up, complain about it. Not shut up, complain about it, but to a point. If you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk.
It is hard to avoid this stuff.
I know.
Skype was brought out by Microsoft, and one of the first things they did was enable the full snooping capability to record the data and keep that. I mean, anyone that collects your data is going to hand it over. So if you've got a Tesco's club card or an Extra card or something, the people don't sort of think of that as the surveillance state. But the government's just said to supermarkets, "Oh, we want that data too." So anyone that's really interested in gathering a lot of data about you is going to be handing it over to the government. And people say, "Well, I'm not doing anything wrong," and I say, "Well, is it you that decides what's wrong?"
I mean, I think this actually leads to a dark place if we don't really start flagging this up now, because I actually think this leads to withdrawal of privileges and allowances, and those privileges and allowances will be the services that you take for granted now.
Yeah,
and I'm talking about healthcare primarily.
Well, it's a good point, because the government is looking at something called online ID assurance, and they're saying, "Oh, don't worry, we won't keep all your details in a big government database, because we know people don't like the idea of that."
Yeah, so keep it in lots of small ones, yeah.
So they'll say, well, if you want to log on to the Job Centre Plus website, or if you want to apply for your benefits, everything's got to be online now, including they'll say, "Oh, just log in with your Facebook ID." So what they're saying is that the Facebook and Twitter or whatever will become your online ID. So obviously that will mean no more fake names, no more fake details. It'll have to be real ID. Now, I don't see what's good about using Facebook as your ID card when you go online. I don't see what's good about that at all. But of course, if the government decides that that's how they'll run it, that you can just log in with Facebook, then it'll lock people even more into those systems.
I think all we can do is shout loud and proud that it doesn't have to be this way, but what people always say to me is, if you can't offer me a better alternative, why am I listening? And it's really, really disappointing that people see it like that other people have to provide their needs. But that's what children do. That's how children react, isn't it? Well, if that's not good for me, I'm not doing it. They don't realise the danger of not becoming, we've got smart meters and dumb people. Yeah.
I mean, the smart meters that can turn off your fridge or turn your thermostat down, if it thinks you're using more than your allotted carbon allowance or something ridiculous.
I know.
And it's Big Brother reaching into your home and turning your fridge off. We're just giving away control over our lives, over every little aspect of our lives, to a sort of a technocratic system, a faceless system that knows better.
It's terrifying, because Group 4 Security, Serco, and whoever else is these private companies that they're taking over the infrastructure and the work of what the services used to do, particularly the police and the council. We're now getting private companies coming in to take over service industry. And we're their customers, but we're also their paymasters.
Yeah. And once you make it profitable to lock people up in prisons, then you watch the gold rush. We know the situation that they have in America.
Yeah.
More people locked up in prisons than any other country on the planet.
And working in prisons, they are, aren't they? They're contracting it out now.
Ken Clarke, the Justice Minister, wants to basically pimp out the prison population as slave labour to his corporate buddies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they describe it as work training and job opportunities and this sort of thing. But basically, it's a bunch of prisoners working a full week for about, I don't know, maybe they give them 20 quid or something. For a private company, it's the same principle as getting unemployed people to work in supermarkets for nothing. Yeah. It's the slave labour principle, where the government has created millions of unemployed people. He's now going to pimp them out as slave labour to their corporate buddies.
And that's exactly the way I see it going. You're absolutely right.
You're right.
I think they're going to criminalise us all. And because they won't be able to imprison us all, we'll have to pay by doing this, by performing on the plantation. The sophisticated plantation that we can't see yet. We're going to be criminalised, we're going to be fined, and we're going to have to pay that fine off working for the Friends. Yeah, that's how I think it's going to go.
You mentioned the movement, the growth in cities.
Mm-hmm.
I was just doing a bit of research the other night and came across a United Nations document, UN Habitat Agenda, where it talks about human resettlement program, which is about herding everyone into these big cities, which are like panopticons. They're like the open prison with the surveillance, monitoring, and tracking systems. So people are much more easy to control in an urban environment that's built for that sort of human management approach.
Well, we do know that for the first time in history now, more people live in confined, I say confinement, because I see cities as confinement. They know that if they stack and packers, we don't really like it. We do get accustomed to it, but that's not the way we're designed. We don't socialise when we're stacked too close. We don't feel community when we're stacked together. I mean, if you look back to the villages and towns that would have existed 100 years ago, the houses had space, and we felt an element of freedom, but community just the same. Whereas the tighter they stack us, the less community we feel.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more people who live on their own. That figure is going up every year. So everyone in their individual boxes, not living with family, not living, as really part of a community, but individual dwelling units. And they're getting smaller and smaller.
I know. We've put forward a rather dark and depressing broadcast this evening, but I can't help it, and I don't apologise for it. And I know it's a couple of weeks before Christmas, and if you really are annoyed at me for doing this, then you shouldn't be listening. You really shouldn't be listening. This show is not for you if I've upset you. What I should have done is angered you to a certain point. What Steve's done, what Andy's done, you should be angry now. And now you should be angry in a point that I'm going to find out for myself. I'm not going to take what these guys have said. I'm going to do my own research, and I'm going to speak out, because the world I leave for my children, that's what they're going to think of me. That is, your legacy will be what you leave to them. And this system is going to make sure that you've got nothing left to leave them. Because one way or another, they're going to steal the bloody lot if we let them. It's not done yet, and I ain't done fighting. But we're going to have to just get smarter in bigger numbers. For me, that's the solution. Get smarter in bigger numbers. Go and annoy your councillors. Annoy your next-door neighbours. Work on your family, who'll think you're probably nuts. You don't say, I'm not nuts, I am mad, though. And nuts and mad are completely different things in my eyes. Steve, I have to say thank you for joining us this evening. It has been a pleasure to learn of somebody who's succeeded against Big Brother and who continues to do so. So tell us a little bit about the website, and it's nocctv.org.
Yeah, nocctv.org.uk.
Yep.
There's loads of stuff there. What we don't do, we don't really repeat media stories, which is when people are sort of spreading information about Big Brother, what they tend to do, and I'm often guilty of this myself, is I'll link to an article and say, can you believe this? This is terrible, shocking.
Yeah.
At No CCTV, the website there, we'll always go to the source material. So we might start from a media report and then go back to the documents or wherever that information came from, and we'll look at it thoroughly. All the information there is totally credible. It's all from academic research or government reports. It's we've not just taken media spin and then commented on it. So, for instance, I'll give you. There's a page on there called "The Case Against CCTV." There's 14 different studies done by academics over the years, including a meta-analysis of of over 44 studies, most of it commissioned by the Home Office and the police themselves. All of it says basically CCTV has had no significant effect on crime, which obviously is not the message that the public is given.
No.
So there's a lot more to it than people realise, and you really do need to step back, take a fresh look at it and reconsider. And if you go to our website, you will get the truthful, factual information there. Everything we say, we've backed up by documents and evidence, which fairly indisputable. So there's a lot of misleading stuff in the media. Some of it's scaremongering, some of it's sort of looking ahead to the future, which isn't quite there yet. Some of it's blatantly wrong. There was a story about CCTV in people's homes a few years ago, and it kind of somehow got around the world that, oh yeah, in England, in Britain, they've got cameras in people's homes. And there was never really any source for that, and it didn't really check out, and it wasn't true. But so you have to be careful about sort of saying, oh, they're doing this now when they're not. I mean, facial recognition isn't there yet. They're working on it. The drones thing is a big worry because that's a massive industry that's taking off in a big way. But we do have to do something. So if you find out what they're up to, go to your local council meetings, find out what the local council is proposing or the local police. Go to these meetings, get in there, ask questions, insist on the case being proven that it's going to be, if they want to put cameras up in your area, insist on a public consultation, an informed one, get the facts, and get them to prove that it works, get them to prove that there's a need for it, and get them to prove that people want it. And if done properly, they won't be able to, because it's all based on lies, really. It's a myth that CCTV cuts crime, catches criminals, and keeps you safe. It doesn't, but it's a psychological thing. People believe that, so they tend to support it, and they don't realise what it's really doing, which is building up this huge panopticon. So, but you do have to do something. It's not good enough to just sort of tut and say, oh, can you believe that? I mean, I got stuck in and launched a media campaign, and
you are doing it, yeah. You're doing it, Steve. Very good.
Do something. I put a lot into it, but most people are kind of too busy, and you think you can't leave it to other people, and you certainly can't leave it to the politicians. They are not going to be the ones that are going to save us from this.
I know, we're going to save ourselves. Good advice. Thank you for your company, Steve. I do wish you a peaceful and joyous Christmas time. And 2013, let's hope for more successes by more people. Not relying on yourself, but helping yourself and other people to recreate that success and shake the world into the reality that they can't quite see yet, but it can see them. Steve, thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Steve.
Paul.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, well, I hope that helps somebody. I mean, a lot of people who are listening are going to already be aware of a lot that we just talked about. But we're making sure to get them onto YouTube, get the edit onto YouTube, and get more people to say, I know. Well, get talking about it. Don't tell me you know. Get talking about it and make a difference.